Going into the King's Speech, we didn't have any sense of the ultimate commercial reality that the film would see. The film went on to be the highest grossing British independent film of all time. So I don't think that there's an instant formula, I don't think there's necessarily a set of rules, but there is definitely some good practice to adhere to. For us at Bedlam, it always starts with the word on the page, and it doesn't matter what bells and whistles you put round a script. If the script doesn't work on a functional basis and excite and engage, then the rest of it is just keeping people busy. Kajaki does. Kajaki has a very strong script. In Paul, you have a wonderful filmmaker that has such a passion for the material.
I would look at a film like Kajaki and say that actually it's got a tremendous opportunity because it's very tightly drawn. It's a specific moment in a specific time with specific characters who are true. And therefore there's a lot of integrity, there's a lot of history, recent history that's being brought back to life. It's about as far away from a news flash as possible and much more connected to an interpersonal human experience in a place of great pressure. Now those are universal things. It doesn't have to just be a war movie, that could be some other subject matter. But Kajaki is very, very tightly drawn, and that is one of its main advantages as a piece of material.
Immediately it sort of ticked a few boxes for what Paul and I were looking for. It was very contained, both in sense of time and location and number of guys. It was one story in one place. It wasn't a story about the entire conflict. And crucially, it had a very human element to it. So Paul and I sort of both went off on a little sort of initial research journey on this, and very early on I think we felt this was a movie. This was a movie that we could make in terms of our sensibilities, in terms of the scale of project. We felt we could get off the ground, and also it was a story that gripped us right from the start, and a story that had to be told.
On a prima facie basis, everyone sees it as a war film. It's so much more than that. It's a clever drama that plays out in a single location.
From a director's standpoint, it's just manna from heaven. It's a fantastic story. You have a fairly classic structure, film structure, so we get the chance to meet the guys at the beginning and spend a little bit of time with them before they're hurled into a disaster that they've got to fight their way out of.
The story really is an important sort of document that needs to be made, and we need to understand what has gone on the ground in Afghanistan. The British story. It's not about the politics, it's about the people who go and fight that conflict. And that's a really important story to say. But also we need a document, because at the end of combat operations at 2014, when the UK military withdraws, we may lose a really important part of our history.
The Americans seem quite content to portray their armed forces heroically in modern conflict. Somehow us Brits don't seem to want to do that. We ran out of heroism around 1945, apparently, if you look at the films that are being made. And that's another motivation for doing this, because why is it that we can't show our armed forces in modern conflict when the Americans do? And the danger is if we sort of let the Americans be the sole people that are doing this, by the way, the Americans and some Europeans, then they're writing our history for us, and I think it's really important that we don't let that happen.
We're emotionally involved with our troops now, and that's only come about the last 7 or 8 years really, but we don't really understand them. So it goes from one extreme that they're all sort of cold-blooded killers to the other extreme is that everybody's ready to hang themselves because they've got PTSD. Not so. They're your next door neighbour's kids, and we've actually lost that. But what these next door neighbours' kids are doing are things that you would never ever dream of.
There was hundreds of these actions, brave actions happening day in, day out in Afghanistan, but I think this will just typify, just one instance. It will stand up for everyone who served their Queen country and actually their friends, colleagues and everything else. And I think this film will be a really good vehicle to show this is why, what people do in the heat of the moment, why there's a long-lasting legacy. And I'd hope that the film will really show that through and remind the ordinary public and our politicians of what raw bravery encourages about.